All right, Alex. First off, thanks so much for being here. I appreciate it. My first question that I have for you is, tell the audience a little bit about yourself and how you got into the mental health realm.
All right. Well, I'm Alex Galura. I'm a private practice owner at Life Reclaimed Therapy. I'm based in Los Angeles, California. Um, I would say that I kind of got a late start in my therapy career. I did major in psychology back in undergrad, and then took a little bit of a detour. I worked in the entertainment marketing industry for 11 years. During that time, I went through a couple things. I ended up herniating a disc in my back. So I had back surgery in my 20s. And around that same time, I also went through a breakup. So, kind of after all that happened, I was trying to rediscover who I was. And I started hiking just to kind of find myself again and connect with other people, make friends. And it turned out really loving it. So I ended up starting a side business guiding camping and backpacking trips, kind of in addition to doing my full-time job. And yeah, I just felt really inspired by people who were kind of getting out, experiencing the outdoors for the first time. They were all seeming to be on their own healing journey of sorts, to be able to help people in a deeper, more meaningful way. And so I ended up quitting my job and going to grad school to become a therapist. And yeah, that was around when I turned 35, I believe.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, that's been my journey. Um, I've worked in after I graduated, I worked in community mental health for around 3.5 years. And then I went into starting my own private practice. So now I specialize in supporting mostly women going through breakups, divorce, and recovering from emotional abuse or any kind of relationship trauma.
Hmm. So, like, because you mentioned that a minute ago, like, what are some of the therapy sessions like when you meet with women who've gone through a breakup or abuse, what are the sessions like?
Yeah, well, I think going through a breakup or divorce of any kind is kind of feels, I mean, it's a huge life transition. And, especially if it's been a long-term relationship, you can kind of lose that sense of who you are without that person. So I think it takes some time to kind of untangle and rediscover who you are outside that relationship, find your identity again, especially if there's been trauma. We do a lot of work just like regulating your nervous system and um, making it so that you feel safe and secure again. Um, so yeah, I think depending on the level of trauma, we could go a little bit deeper into that kind of stuff. But yeah,
Hmm.
it's a very difficult time for a lot of people.
Yeah, because I remember I didn't necessarily go through a breakup myself, but oftentimes, I felt rejected. Because I told this story before where I kind of knew this classmate of mine. She was in the same journalism school, and so I kind of was interested in her, and we would get to know each other, via social media. We would DM each other, and then we would talk a little bit about ourselves, about our families, that kind of unpacking that people usually do when they meet people. And
Yeah.
so one thing leads to another, and then the interesting thing she said was, you're a really nice guy, but, I don't think we would be a good couple. Those were her words, and I was
Mm.
just like, whatever. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, never feels good to have that kind of rejection, but sounds like you handled it in a healthy way.
Yeah. Do you get a lot of
Yeah,
clients that have gone through that rejection?
I mean, absolutely, especially when I'm specifically around like breakups, especially if somebody didn't initiate the breakup, that can be really difficult to cope with. Feeling,
Hmm.
especially, um, and I think a lot around recovery from emotional abuse, there's a lot of challenges with like self-worth and feeling like, something about you is wrong or bad. So I think part of the healing is discovering that, some of those things aren't true, that you are a good person and, there are qualities about you that make you, you know, valuable to yourself and lovable by others. I
Yeah.
don't know if that's directly related to your question, but
Yeah. It's also
um,
this idea of this common phrase like, it's not you, it's me. Like it's the common phrase that no one likes.
yeah, no, nobody wants to hear that.
Yeah.
Um, I get that.
Mm-hmm. So, cause like what sort of modalities do you use to help people going through, a breakup or emotional abuse?
Yeah, so I'd say that um I kind of come from a trauma-informed lens. So before we go into any deeper trauma work, there's kind of a period of like stabilizing. So I like to teach people about their nervous system and give them some coping tools to regulate their nervous system, especially when we've experienced trauma. Our brain kind of sometimes gets stuck in that fight or flight mode or in the space of feeling like really shut down. And it's really hard to do deeper work when you're constantly responding to threats. Um, so yeah, giving people coping skills, making them feel empowered to, recognize what's happening in their body when they feel activated by something and to be able to get to a space where they feel safe and connected with themselves and others. And then we can go into the deeper trauma work. I am trained in EMDR, so that's kind of one tool that we can use to process trauma. I also like to incorporate a lot of like attachment theory and how we interact with other people in relationships. We all have a different attachment style based on our upbringing and life experiences. So
Mm-hmm.
I guess those are a couple of the tools. And yeah, I have kind of a toolbox of different things that can be applicable to people depending on what they're needing.
Mm-hmm. What has been like your favorite to use? Is if you had to like rank them, like what's your top?
My favorite. Let's see. That's a good question. I don't know. I have done EMDR in my own therapy and have felt like how healing and powerful that can be. So that's something I get really excited about using so that, it can kind of get to the root of a lot of deep trauma and like open up some space for healing that can feel really powerful.
Mm-hmm. And like what in addition to EMDR, do you use any sorts of modalities that sort of help with breakups and or abuse, that kind of, just to kind of help women through their struggles, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, like I said earlier, like the nervous system work is based on polyvagal theory, kind of the way that your nervous system senses danger and what it does to try to protect you. Um, Coming from that lens, also, I'd say I am trained in CBT, so that's something that's pretty
Hmm.
ingrained in me. But I am kind of liking exploring some different approaches. But CBT can definitely be helpful and kind of challenging the way that you think, um, um, because the way that we think is not always true or beneficial to us.
Hmm. In these kinds of situations, of like breakups or emotional abuse, how important is it for clients to feel seen and heard? So like how do you as a therapist, facilitate that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's incredibly important. I think anybody needs to feel seen and heard, especially by their therapist. And, I think just in particular, women recovering from emotional abuse, there can be a lot of isolation involved with that and a lot of gaslighting and, um, a lot of hurt to their self-esteem. So I think that Sometimes it can be really powerful just for somebody to validate and acknowledge what you've been through and to kind of untangle um, the gaslighting and the things that you've come to believe about yourself that are not true. Um,
Hmm.
I think that could be very powerful. And, also just going through a breakup is incredibly difficult. Like it's not even just an emotional detachment, it's like a physical detachment as well. That you're literally, your brain is going through withdrawal from somebody that you were attached to. So, um, having support during that process, I think, can be incredibly helpful and supportive.
I have a friend that used to say, in order to find that someone, you have to love yourself. So how important is it to do that?
Oh, I think it absolutely it's important to love yourself. And I think part of breakup therapy also, like once you're kind of recovered from the shock of it, is exploring what your values are. What are the things that are important to you? What are the red flags that you should look out for? Knowing, like I said earlier, like your attachment style and how you respond to other people in relationships. Just, I feel like knowing yourself and honoring your needs and your values as you are looking for your next relationship um, can be incredibly beneficial and helpful and empowering too.
Hmm. Oftentimes I think talking about all these kinds of difficult subjects is important because oftentimes movies showcase this. I remember, have you ever seen the movie It Ends With Us?
Gosh, that sounds so familiar. You might have to jog my memory.
I think I think it was a I think it was based off a book by Colleen Hoover, and they made a movie about it. And so it talks about, this couple who owns this woman who owns a flower shop. He meets this guy, they start a relationship, and then she experiences instances of emotional abuse, physical and emotional abuse. I highly recommend watching it.
You know
So
what? You're now that you're describing it, it has Blake Lively in it, right?
yeah, it has her
Yes.
in it. Yeah.
Yes, I did see that.
So, how does media itself, illustrate that or like movies?
Yeah, I think that I think that stuff can be kind of hard to watch sometimes. Just because I you can kind of see how like emotional abuse sometimes it can develop slowly over time. It can be kind of subtle at first and then escalate into something else. Um, and yeah, there can definitely be like a lot of highs and lows in a relationship, and our nervous system can kind of become attracted to that pattern, even if it's not healthy for us. Um, but I do appreciate in that movie, you know, she made the decision to leave the relationship and I think it without giving it away. She had other motivations um
Yeah, I think her
beyond
motivation,
herself.
yeah, her motivation was to like protect. The reason why she wanted to separate from her husband was to protect, it was for her daughter, because that's what she said. It's not for you, it's for
Yeah.
me, it's for my daughter. So I thought
Yes,
that, yeah,
exactly.
that
I didn't want to
was,
give it away in case anyone hadn't seen it yet.
yeah.
But yeah, I admire any woman or man or person who leaves an abusive relationship. It's incredibly difficult. That's why like the statistics are people have to try to leave those relationships multiple times before they're successful. Just because of the nature of the relationship, the gaslighting, the manipulation that happens, and the highs and lows, that kind of trauma bond that happens. So I appreciated seeing an example of a woman who kind of took her power back and decided that, um, you know, that wasn't okay with her.
Mm-hmm. My next question is how really difficult is it for someone who has been in an abusive relationship to 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 find to start a new relationship? Because oftentimes a person might say, I'm afraid that this person might hurt me again or might do this to me again. So Um, like is that really common in a lot of people that you see? Like they've gone through an abusive relationship. They're not sure if they want to start a new relationship, but at the same time they're afraid that they're going to hurt them. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a valid fear after somebody's, betrayed you and hurt you in a way, you know. Um, and I think that's where therapy can be really helpful, kind of understanding and processing that trauma that you went through. So, and I don't think people come into relationships being fully healed or in a perfect place or without their own history or experiences. Like we all have stuff that we bring to the relationship. So I think that, having that awareness of yourself, being able to notice when you're feeling triggered, like being able to have that communication with, the partner that you end up with, having that awareness, like if you notice a red flag with that partner, or I think just like building that awareness so that you know that you're choosing a healthy relationship and that you have a partner that's willing to support you through feeling the way you do, like being vulnerable in a relationship again.
Mm-hmm. What have
Yeah.
you learned in your work with clients? You know, is there anything that you've learned that you've taken away from your conversations with people who have gone through through these traumatic episodes? Um
I
like
don't
through
know. I just,
breakups or like yeah, like we said, in being in an abusive relationship.
yeah, I think that uh, I believe in the power of people to, choose themselves and have the kind of resilience that comes after going through something very traumatic. Um, I've seen people overcome those kinds of things and go on to do really incredible things with their lives, give back to other survivors who have been through similar experiences. I think that it just takes an incredible amount of strength to overcome something like that. And I have just so much admiration and I feel incredibly honored to work with those people and to help them come back to themselves again. I think that's why I chose to specialize in that area.
Mm-hmm. Do you do any advocacy stuff like outside of therapy? Like are you involved in like groups that advocate for you know for women who have been in through breakups or have been through you know a toxic relationship? Are you part in any of some sort of community activism groups in those areas?
Um, Not currently. I would say that I do have some experience working with survivors of domestic violence, and um, in grad school, I did a lot of research in that area. Um, but yeah, definitely something I've kind of just started my practice, getting my feet off the ground, and would something I'd be looking into.
How was it?
How was what
The
getting started?
your research because you said a minute ago that you did research you know for people with d domestic violence I think it was.
Yeah, so in grad school, we kind of had the opportunity to write a thesis. My thesis was I built a curriculum for survivors of intimate partner violence. It was an adventure therapy curriculum, actually. So I kind of brought together my passion for the outdoors and nature with healing for women who are recovering from abusive relationships. So, yeah, in order to put that together, I did do a lot of research, just learning about domestic violence and the risk factors and protective factors and um, just kind of the ways that people can have resilience after that kind of trauma.
Mm-hmm. And also I noticed that you have an Instagram handle. What kind of content do you post on there?
Yeah, so it's a life reclaimed therapy, and it's all about supporting women through recovery from emotional abuse. So it's a talk a lot about just like in general, what is emotional abuse. I talk about how to set healthy boundaries. I talk about attachments and relationship styles, and also talk about how to have self-care after once you're going through a breakup after emotional abuse.
Mm-hmm. Is there anything new that you'd like to learn in your private practice in addition to what you're doing now?
I am excited this summer. I'm doing a training in somatic experiencing. So I've kind of been talking a lot about like nervous system regulation and coping skills for that. I think that's going to really deepen my knowledge about how our bodies hold trauma. And the way that when we experience trauma and we kind of are constantly triggered by different things, it can be hard to like think your way out of to like think rationally about what happened to you and to heal from it. And I think there are other modalities that kind of help you access healing from different ways, like somatic experiencing, accessing healing through your body. So that's something I'm really excited about
Mm-hmm.
learning this summer.
Yeah. Well, good luck. I wish you the best of luck this summer.
Thank
Um,
you. I
uh,
appreciate that.
Next, my last question is, what can other people take away from this conversation? How is it important to have that sort of community, that sort of sisterhood, if you will, of people who have been through those traumatic experiences of, breakups and abuse, and to sort of band together and form this sisterhood, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I love the way you put that. I think, like I said earlier, like the statistics around how many attempts it takes to leave an abusive relationship are incredibly high. Um, I think last time I checked, it was like 8 attempts. Don't quote me on that. I have to double check. But it's quite a few. And so I just remember from my research that one of the protective factors against domestic violence is is social support. So like having people you can relate with who can support you and build you up and help you remember who you are, and that you're a worthy, valuable person, I think is incredibly important to helping you move forward with your life and to find if you desire to find the healthy relationship that you deserve.
Mm-hmm. And for the psychologists who are wanting to not just dive into the mental health field, but learn about this particular area, um, what tips, advice would you give them?
I think like being part of private practice, it's really helpful to like network with other therapists, but I found it like I love that part of like meeting all these different therapists who have experience and training in so many different areas and hearing other perspectives. I think even just before I became a therapist, I just interviewed a whole bunch of therapists to find out like what path did they take to become a therapist, what kinds of things are they interested in, just to have like an idea of what your options are. Um, but another thing that I am doing right now is getting certified. It's a narcissistic abuse treatment certification. So that's something that I'm really interested in and trying to get some more training in. So that's just another option if that's something you're interested in. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, meeting people, asking questions is the best.
Yeah, it's always good. Yeah. Alrighty.
Just like you're doing.
Just like I'm doing exactly. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right.